Most people live their entire lives wishing for things they never receive, not because they lack ability, intelligence, or opportunity, but because they never learned the one skill that separates dreamers from achievers, the ability to transform a burning desire into a systematic, organized plan of action. Good evening, friends. Tonight I want to talk with you about something that may very well change the entire direction of your life. It's a simple thing, really, so simple that most people overlook it entirely. Yet it's the difference between those who achieve their goals and those who merely talk about them. I'm speaking of organized planning. You see, we live in a world where nearly everyone has desires. Walk down any street, enter any office, visit any home, and you'll find people who want things: more money, better health, meaningful work, financial independence, a life of purpose and contribution. The desires are there. They're real. They're powerful. But desire alone accomplishes nothing. Let me say that again, because it's important. Desire alone accomplishes nothing. You can want something with every fiber of your being. You can visualize it, affirm it, pray for it, and still never receive it. Why? Because between desire and attainment lies a chasm that can only be crossed by one thing: an organized plan. Think about it. Every building you see was once just a desire in someone's mind. But that desire became a reality only when it was transformed into blueprints, organized plans, drawn with precision, executed with discipline. The architect didn't simply wish the building into existence. He planned it step by step, detail by detail, until the invisible became visible. Your life works exactly the same way. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Earl, I've made plans before, and they didn't work out. Of course you have. So have I, so has every successful person who ever lived. But here's what you must understand: the temporary defeat of a plan is not the defeat of your purpose. Successful people distinguish themselves not by making perfect plans, but by making plans, testing them, revising them when necessary, and refusing to quit until they find the plan that works. Thomas Edison didn't create the electric light bulb with his first plan. He went through thousands of plans, each one teaching him something, each one bringing him closer to success. The ability to revise your plan without abandoning your desire, that's the hallmark of persistence. And persistence, my friends, is the direct result of organized planning. Let me share with you the essential steps of organized planning. These aren't theories or abstract concepts. They're practical, proven principles that anyone can use, starting tonight. First, you must reduce your desire to a clear, definite statement. Write it down. Don't leave it floating vaguely in your mind. If you desire financial independence, define exactly what that means: how much money, by what date, for what purpose. Vagueness is the enemy of achievement. Clarity is the beginning of power. Second, establish a definite date by which you intend to possess what you desire. A goal without a deadline is just a wish. Time creates urgency. Urgency creates action. Action creates results. Third, create a specific plan for carrying out your desire, and begin at once, whether you're ready or not. Put that plan on paper. Outline the steps. What must happen first? What resources do you need? What knowledge must you acquire? What people could help you? Make your plan tangible. Make it visible. Make it real. Fourth, and this is crucial, form an alliance with one or more people who will help you carry out your plan. No one achieves significant success alone. None of us is as smart as all of us. Surround yourself with people whose knowledge, experience, and cooperation can compensate for your own limitations. This is what Napoleon Hill called the mastermind principle, and it's one of the great secrets of achievement. Henry Ford had little formal education, but he surrounded himself with educated people who could supply what he lacked. Andrew Carnegie couldn't have built his steel empire alone. He organized the knowledge and efforts of dozens of brilliant minds. You and I must do the same thing, on whatever scale is appropriate to our goals. Fifth, put your plan into action immediately. I cannot stress this enough: a plan that remains on paper is worthless. The world rewards those who act, not those who theorize. And here's something interesting: the moment you begin to act, you'll discover flaws in your plan you never would have seen otherwise. That's good. That's progress. Correct them and keep moving. And sixth, review your plan daily. Read it aloud to yourself each morning and each evening. As you do, you'll find that your subconscious mind begins to work on your behalf, presenting you with ideas, opportunities, and insights you wouldn't have noticed otherwise. Your mind becomes magnetized to your goal. Circumstances begin to arrange themselves in your favor. Now, I want to give you a thought to carry with you, something to remember on those days when your plans seem to falter. A goal is a dream with a deadline and a roadmap. Without the roadmap, even the best deadline is meaningless. You see, most people fail not because their goals are too high and they miss them, but because their goals are too low and they reach them, or worse, because they have goals but no organized plan to achieve them. They're like a ship that leaves port with a destination in mind, but no charts, no compass, no captain. They drift. They react to winds and currents instead of harnessing them, and eventually they end up nowhere near where they intended to go. But you're different. You're listening to this message because somewhere inside you is the awareness that you're capable of more. That awareness is correct. You are capable of more. But capability without planning is like an engine without fuel. It has potential, but it goes nowhere. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. We'll call him Robert. Robert worked in a factory for 20 years, earning a modest wage, always wishing he could start his own business. He had the desire. He talked about it constantly, but he never had a plan. One day, Robert attended a lecture where the speaker said something that changed his life. If you want something different, you must do something different. And doing something different begins with planning something different. That night, Robert went home and did something he'd never done before. He wrote down his goal, set a date, and created a plan. His plan wasn't sophisticated. It wasn't perfect, but it was organized. It was written. It was specific. Within 6 months, Robert had saved enough money to lease a small shop. Within 2 years, his business was profitable. Within 5 years, he owned 3 locations and employed 15 people. The transformation wasn't magic. It was the inevitable result of transforming desire into organized planning and organized planning into organized action. What Robert did, you can do. What anyone has done, you can do if you're willing to pay the price in planning, persistence, and disciplined action. Now, let me address something important. Organized planning doesn't eliminate obstacles. It equips you to overcome them. You will face setbacks. Your first plan may fail. Your second plan may fail. You may have to revise your approach a dozen times. But each failure teaches you something valuable. Each temporary defeat makes you stronger, wiser, more resilient. The question isn't whether you'll face obstacles. The question is whether you'll use those obstacles as reasons to quit or as information to revise your plan and try again. Successful people do the latter. They plan, act, learn, revise, and persist until they succeed. And here's something else. Organized planning doesn't just help you achieve your goals. It changes who you become in the process. As you develop the habit of systematic thinking, as you learn to break large goals into manageable steps, as you discipline yourself to write out your plans and follow through on them, you become a different person. You become someone who can be counted on, someone who finishes what they start, someone who solves problems instead of complaining about them. That person, that organized, disciplined, persistent person, is worth more than any external goal you could achieve. Because once you become that person, you can achieve goal after goal after goal for the rest of your life. Desire without a plan is merely a daydream. You know, I've noticed something troubling in my years of studying human behavior. I've watched people, good people, intelligent people, hardworking people, spend their entire lives trapped in a peculiar kind of prison. They wake up each morning with the same hopes they had yesterday. They go to bed each night with the same unfulfilled wishes. And year after year, decade after decade, nothing changes. These aren't lazy people. They're not lacking in desire. In fact, their desires are often quite strong. They want financial security. They want meaningful work. They want to build something of value, to make their mark, to live a life that matters. The desire burns within them. Sometimes it burns so intensely that they can hardly think of anything else. Yet somehow, and this is the mystery that haunts them, somehow those desires never materialize into reality. Now, before I go further, let me ask you to pause for just a moment. Think about something you've wanted for a long time, something important to you. It might be a certain income level, a business of your own, a skill you've always wanted to master, or perhaps a lifestyle you've dreamed about. Got it in your mind? Good. Now ask yourself honestly, do you have a written, step-by-step plan for achieving it? Not a vague intention, not a general idea of what you might do someday, but an actual, concrete, organized plan with specific actions and dates. If you're like most people, the answer is no. And that, my friends, is precisely why the desire remains unfulfilled. Here's what's actually happening. A desire without a plan exists only in the realm of fantasy. It's no different than wishing you could fly or hoping to win a lottery you never entered. It feels real in your mind, certainly. You can visualize it. You can imagine how wonderful it would be. But without a plan, without that crucial bridge between wanting and having, your desire has nowhere to go. It just circulates endlessly in your thoughts, creating frustration, disappointment, and eventually resignation. You see, desire is like having an address but no map. You know where you want to go, but you have no route to get there. And here's the fascinating part: your mind knows this. Somewhere deep down, your subconscious understands that without a plan, your desire is impotent. So it files that desire away in the same category as daydreams and wishes. It doesn't take it seriously because it has no instructions for making it real. But the very moment, you transform that desire into an organized plan, everything changes. Suddenly, your subconscious has something it can work with. It has directions. It has steps. It knows what to do first, what to do second, what to do third. Your desire shifts from the imaginary to the possible, from fantasy to blueprint. Think of it this way. Every magnificent building in every city in the world was once just a desire in an architect's mind. But that desire became reality only when it was translated into plans, detailed drawings showing exactly where each wall would stand, where each door would open, how each room would connect to the next. The desire alone built nothing. The plan built everything. Success favors the organized mind. I want to tell you about something I've observed countless times, and perhaps you've seen it too. There are people who seem to work harder than anyone else you know. They're busy from morning until night. They rush from one task to another, always in motion, always occupied. Yet at the end of the year, they're no further ahead than they were at the beginning. In fact, sometimes they've actually fallen behind. And then there are others, perhaps you know someone like this, who seem to accomplish more in a few focused hours than most people do in weeks. They're not necessarily more talented. They don't work longer hours. They don't seem stressed or frantic. Yet somehow they consistently move forward. Projects get completed. Goals get reached. Success seems to follow them naturally. What's the difference between these two types of people? Why do some work so hard for so little while others achieve so much with what appears to be less effort? Here's what I want you to consider for just a moment. Think about your own day yesterday. How much of your time was spent on activities that directly moved you toward your most important goals? How much was spent reacting to interruptions, handling emergencies, or doing things that simply felt urgent, but weren't actually important? Be honest with yourself. If you're like most people, you'll realize that the majority of your time was consumed by the immediate, the pressing, the demands of the moment, rather than by deliberate progress toward what truly matters to you. And this is where we discover something profound. The difference between those two types of people isn't talent, luck, or even effort. It's the quality of their thinking. One group operates with a scattered mind, reacting, responding, putting out fires. The other operates with an organized mind, planning, prioritizing, executing according to a system. You see, your mind is either your servant or your master. An unorganized mind jumps from thought to thought like a grasshopper in a field. It starts one thing, gets distracted, starts another, remembers something else, and ends the day having touched many things but completed nothing of real value. It mistakes motion for progress and business for productivity. But an organized mind, that's something entirely different. An organized mind knows exactly where it's going and precisely how to get there. It prioritizes ruthlessly. It focuses completely. It doesn't scatter its energy across 100 minor concerns. Instead, it concentrates its full power on the few activities that produce the greatest results. Here's the liberating truth: organizing your mind isn't complicated. It doesn't require special intelligence or years of training. It simply requires making a daily habit of doing three things. First, decide each evening what the most important tasks are for the following day. Not everything. Just the 3 to 5 activities that will move you significantly forward. Write them down. This simple act programs your subconscious mind to work on these priorities even while you sleep. Second, begin each day by working on your most important task first, before the world intrudes with its demands and distractions. Give your best hours to your best opportunities. Don't let email, phone calls, or other people's agendas consume your prime mental energy. Third, complete what you start before jumping to something else. One finished task is worth more than a dozen half-done projects. When you organize your thinking this way, something remarkable happens. The same 24 hours that once seemed insufficient suddenly become abundant. You accomplish more in less time because you're no longer wasting energy on mental chaos. Every great fortune began as a written plan. Let me share something with you that might make you uncomfortable at first. I've met thousands of people over the years who told me about their dreams, their ambitions, their plans for the future. They spoke with passion and conviction. Their eyes lit up as they described what they intended to accomplish. And I believed them. I could see they were sincere. But then I began asking one simple question. Have you written that down? And do you know what happened? Most of them looked at me with surprise, even confusion. Written down? No, they hadn't written it down. It was in their head. They thought about it all the time. They knew exactly what they wanted. Why would they need to write it down? And that's when I knew, with absolute certainty, that most of these dreams would never become reality. Not because these people lacked desire. Not because they weren't capable, but because they were trying to build their future on a foundation of vapor, of thoughts that drift through the mind and then disappear like morning mist. Now, I want you to stop for just a moment and think about something important. Think about the major goal you're working toward right now, or the one you've been thinking about working toward. Can you describe it in precise detail? Do you know exactly what success looks like? Do you know the specific steps required to get there? And most importantly, is all of this written down somewhere where you can see it, review it, and revise it? Or is it all just floating somewhere in your thoughts, clear one moment and vague the next? Let me tell you what's really happening when you fail to write down your plans. Your mind is an extraordinary instrument, but it wasn't designed to hold complex plans in perfect detail. When your plan exists only in your thoughts, it changes shape constantly. One day you're crystal clear about your goal. The next day it's slightly different. A week later you've unconsciously modified it again. Your target keeps moving, so naturally you never hit it. But something almost magical happens the moment you put your plan on paper. First, the act of writing forces clarity. You can't write down a vague intention. You must make decisions. You must specify. How much money? By what date? Through what means? What's the first step? What's the second? Your fuzzy desires are suddenly transformed into concrete objectives. Second, a written plan creates accountability. When your plan is only in your head, you can change it or abandon it without anyone noticing, including yourself. You can pretend you never really meant it. But when it's written down, staring back at you in black and white, you can't hide from it. You either honor it or consciously choose to break your word to yourself. Third, and this is perhaps most important, a written plan activates your subconscious mind in ways that mental plans never do. Your subconscious accepts written goals as instructions, as commands that must be carried out. It begins working 24 hours a day to bring opportunities, ideas, and resources into your awareness that align with what you've written. Consider this: every business that ever succeeded began with a written plan. Every building ever constructed started with written blueprints. Every book ever published was written down before it reached readers. The Wright brothers didn't just think about flying, they filled notebooks with calculations and designs. Thomas Edison documented thousands of experiments in writing. There's a reason for this pattern. Writing transforms the invisible into the visible, the abstract into the concrete, the possible into the probable. Your fortune, whatever that means to you, is waiting to be written into existence. The pen is in your hand. Plans must be flexible, not fragile. I've watched it happen more times than I can count, and it's one of the saddest things I've ever witnessed. A person sets a goal, they create a plan, they launch forward with enthusiasm and determination. And then, inevitably, something goes wrong. The plan hits an obstacle. A door that was supposed to open stays closed. An approach that should have worked doesn't. A timeline that seemed reasonable proves unrealistic. And right there, at that crucial moment, something devastating happens. The person interprets this setback not as feedback, but as failure. Not as information, but as evidence that they should quit. They crumple. They give up. They tell themselves and anyone who listened that they tried and it didn't work out. And the dream dies, not because it was impossible, not because they lacked ability, but because they treated their plan as if it were made of glass, beautiful but fragile, shattering at the first real test. Now, I want you to think about something for just a moment. Consider any significant goal you've pursued in your life. Maybe it was buying a home, starting a business, earning a degree, or building a relationship. Did your original plan work perfectly from start to finish? Or did you have to adjust, adapt, change course, try different approaches? If you're honest, you'll admit that you had to modify your approach, perhaps many times, before you finally succeeded. And that's not a sign of weakness or poor planning. That's exactly how achievement works in the real world. Here's what you need to understand: temporary defeat is not permanent failure. In fact, temporary defeat isn't failure at all, it's simply information. It's your reality telling you that this particular approach, at this particular time, in this particular way, needs adjustment. Nothing more, nothing less. Think of it like this: when you're driving to a destination and you encounter a road that's closed, you don't turn around and go home, do you? You don't conclude that your destination is unreachable. You simply find another route. You adjust, you adapt. You keep moving toward where you want to go, just by a different path. Your plans must work the same way. They need to be firm enough to give you direction, but flexible enough to bend without breaking when reality demands adjustment. Every successful person I've ever studied, and I mean every single one, faced multiple setbacks on their path to achievement. Henry Ford went broke 5 times before building the Ford Motor Company. Thomas Edison's teachers told him he was too stupid to learn anything. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. Colonel Sanders' chicken recipe was rejected over 1,000 times before a restaurant said yes. But here's the key: none of these people allowed temporary defeat to become permanent failure. They changed their plans while holding firm to their purpose. They revised their strategies while refusing to abandon their goals. They were flexible in their methods, but immovable in their determination. This is the attitude that changes everything. When you understand that your first plan is rarely your final plan, that revision is part of the process, not proof of inadequacy, you become unstoppable. Each setback becomes a stepping stone. Each obstacle becomes a teacher. Each no brings you closer to wise. The plan may change 100 times. The goal remains constant. That's not inconsistency. That's wisdom. That's how greatness is built, one adjustment at a time, moving ever forward toward the life you're determined to create. No one succeeds alone. There's a dangerous myth that circulates in our culture, and I've seen it destroy more dreams than almost anything else. It's the myth of the self-made person, the lone wolf who pulls themselves up by their bootstraps, who needs no one, who conquers the world through sheer individual willpower and determination. And the reason this myth is so dangerous is that it keeps people isolated. It keeps them struggling alone with problems that others have already solved. It keeps them reinventing wheels when they could be building automobiles. I've watched talented, ambitious people spend years, sometimes decades, trying to accomplish alone what they could have achieved in months with the right help. Perhaps you felt this way yourself. Perhaps there's a part of you that believes asking for help is a sign of weakness. That real success means doing it all yourself. That if you can't figure it out on your own, you don't deserve to succeed. And so you keep your plans to yourself. You struggle in silence. You try to be everything: the strategist, the executor, the expert in every field your goal requires. But let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. Can you name even one person who achieved significant success entirely on their own, without the knowledge, cooperation, assistance, or resources of others? Just one. You can't. Because that person doesn't exist. They never have, and they never will. Here's what actually happens in the real world of achievement. Every successful person, without exception, stands on the shoulders of others. They're surrounded by people whose strengths compensate for their weaknesses, whose knowledge fills their gaps, whose perspectives illuminate their blind spots. Henry Ford, one of the wealthiest men in American history, had barely a 6th grade education. But he had the wisdom to surround himself with educated engineers, brilliant designers, and skilled managers who could supply what he lacked. He didn't try to be everything. He assembled a team, what Napoleon Hill called a mastermind alliance, of people whose combined knowledge and effort could achieve what he never could have accomplished alone. Andrew Carnegie, the great steel magnate, knew almost nothing about the technical aspects of steel production. But he knew how to select and motivate people who did. He organized their knowledge, their skills, and their efforts toward a common goal, and together they built an empire. Thomas Edison maintained a laboratory full of talented assistants. The Wright brothers worked as a team, two minds solving problems that one mind alone could not. Every great achievement in history has been a collaborative effort, even when history remembers only one name. And here's the beautiful part: when you open yourself to working with others, when you're willing to ask for help, to seek counsel, to form alliances with people whose abilities complement your own, you don't just increase your chances of success, you multiply them exponentially. Two people working together with organized planning don't just double their effectiveness, they create something far greater than the sum of their individual efforts. Ideas spark new ideas. One person's strength compensates for another's weakness. Enthusiasm becomes contagious. Momentum builds. But this requires something many people find difficult: humility. The humility to admit you don't know everything. The humility to ask questions. The humility to accept help, guidance, and correction from those who know more than you do in specific areas. This isn't weakness. This is strength. This is wisdom. This is how the world actually works. Right now, somewhere in your life, there are people who have already solved the problems you're facing. There are people who possess knowledge you need. There are people who would willingly help you if you simply ask. Your success is waiting on the other side of your willingness to seek them out and humbly request their cooperation. Action is the test of planning. I want to tell you about the most heartbreaking pattern I've observed in all my years of studying human achievement. It's not the pattern of people who never plan at all. They're simply unaware of what's possible. No, the saddest pattern involves people who do everything right up to a certain point. They set clear goals. They write them down. They create detailed, thoughtful plans. They organize their thinking beautifully. And then they stop. The plan sits in a drawer. The notebook closes. The document saves on their computer. And weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. And that brilliant plan, that roadmap to everything they wanted, never gets tested in the real world. It remains perfect, pristine, and completely powerless because it never makes contact with reality. These people aren't lazy. They're terrified. Terrified that if they try and fail, they'll prove something awful about themselves. So they keep planning, refining, preparing. They tell themselves they're not quite ready yet. They need to learn just a little bit more, plan just a little better, wait for conditions to be just a little more favorable. But that moment of perfect readiness, it never comes. Now think about something you've been planning to do. Maybe it's a business you want to start, a skill you want to develop, a conversation you need to have, or a change you want to make. You've thought about it. Perhaps you've even planned it carefully. But have you actually taken the first concrete step? Or is that plan still waiting for someday, for the right moment, for when you feel completely ready? Here's what I need you to understand, and it might be the most important thing I tell you today. A plan that isn't executed is worse than no plan at all. At least people without plans don't waste time creating elaborate blueprints for buildings they never construct. But a plan without action, that's a special kind of self-deception. It creates the illusion of progress while producing none of the results. The truth is this: you will never feel completely ready. You will never have all the answers. You will never eliminate all the risks. And if you wait until you do, you'll wait forever. Action is what separates planning from pretending. It's what transforms your written goals from wishes into prophecies. When you take action, even imperfect, uncertain, hesitant action, you activate forces that no amount of planning alone can summon. When you act, you learn things no book can teach you. You discover which parts of your plan work and which don't. You encounter obstacles you never anticipated and opportunities you couldn't have planned for. You develop skills that only real-world experience can provide. Your confidence grows not from thinking about success, but from taking steps toward it. Here's something fascinating: the moment you begin to act on your plan, your mind shifts. It stops asking, "What if I fail?" and starts asking, "What's next?" It stops operating in theory and starts operating in reality. Problems become concrete instead of abstract, which means they become solvable. And other people notice. When you're merely planning, you're invisible. But when you're acting, when you're actually building something, creating something, doing something, people pay attention. Opportunities appear, help arrives. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. But none of this happens until you move. Until you take that first step. Until you make that first phone call, write that first page, have that first conversation, invest that first dollar, or whatever your particular plan requires. Your plan is not meant to be perfect. It's meant to be tested, adjusted, and improved through action. A mediocre plan executed with commitment will always outperform a brilliant plan that never leaves the page. The world doesn't reward the best planners. It rewards those who act. So tonight, before you go to bed, I want you to do something. Take out a piece of paper and write down one goal, just one that's important to you. It could be financial, professional, personal, or spiritual. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's your goal, something that genuinely matters to you. Then, under that goal, write today's date and a target date for achievement. Make it realistic but ambitious. Give yourself a deadline. Finally, create a simple plan. List 5 specific actions you could take to move toward that goal. Not someday, not when conditions are perfect now. Tonight, this week, and tomorrow morning, take the first step. Make the first phone call. Do the first hour of research. Write the first page. Take the first action, however small. Because here's the truth. My friends, the universe rewards action. Doors open for those who knock. Opportunities appear for those who seek them. But none of that happens until you transform your desire into an organized plan and your plan into immediate, persistent action. You have the power within you right now to change the direction of your entire life. Not someday, not when circumstances improve, not when you feel ready. Now, the question is, will you use that power? The answer is entirely up to you.